Hi, welcome to Werks. Today is another one-day build in my 52 cards in 52 weeks challenge. Last week I drew a 6 of diamonds, which says business card display, and I'm going to be building this for my local coffee shop.
So this is actually a piece of firewood that I milled up probably about 6 months ago. I wanted to give it enough time to dry, and I could see the figure just from the outside of the piece. You can see this beautiful figured maple, and what's cool about this too is one of the owners of the coffee shop owns a tree company as well, and this is a tree that he cut down a while back. So I just started by running it over the joiner to get a nice flat true face to start with, and then I can move over to the table saw. Because I only had a little bit of this wood, I used a really thin kerf blade to maximize the material usage here. So I cut out a whole bunch of pieces. That figured material I just used for the front show faces, and then I'm using some white oak to go around the whole piece. Once that was done, I could bust out my big planer and run all the pieces through there to get them all to a uniform thickness. And then I could go back to the table saw and cut everything to the exact same size so it would all fit together nicely. Using my crosscut sled, I can cut everything to the same length. So here I have my ripping blade set up. It's got a flat tooth grind on it, and I can run that through to just cut a little dado in the middle of each of these pieces, and I can use that to put a divider in to keep the business cards separate from each other. And then I cut just a little rabbet on the edge of these pieces. For these small projects, I find it really beneficial to cut rabbets on everything. That way everything kind of locks together, and it just makes gluing up these little tiny pieces much easier. So you can see all the rabbets around the whole piece. And then just cutting up the little dividers. It's just from some 1/8 inch material. And since there were so many little pieces here, I glued everything up in a couple stages. So I glued up the front pieces as kind of an individual unit, and I glued up all of those. I think there were 11 of them. So then I could move on to the case sides, and what I did was I put a shim against the fence and then ran the board through again. This would make a dado that matched the thickness of the material. Now, I do want to point out a safety thing here. When using a miter gauge, it's a better idea to use a stop block against the fence rather than run the piece right against the fence. With all my dados cut, I can run that piece through the table saw and cut it in half. In this way, both of my sides are identical. My shop was getting a bit cramped here, so I had to maneuver the bandsaw and move it around a couple times just to make that radius cut. And as luck would have it, the shrink wrap tube was just about the same diameter as my radius, so I was able to use that as a sanding guide. And with all of these pieces dry, I can sand them out. This took quite a while because there's just a lot of little pieces and intricate parts to sand. Moving on to glue up. I do want to be honest, I ended up gluing this up pretty late at night, and I just let it sit overnight. So this is technically not a one-day build. I ended up doing the final sanding and finishing the next morning. Here I am taking all the clamps off the piece, putting them away. Now, I could have stayed up later and finished it out that night, but I thought it was important, especially because this is for a customer, that I took a little bit of extra time, even if I don't meet the actual rules of my own challenge. So, as I was recording this, I was listening to the new episode of Digitally Creative by Vincent Ferrari, and he happened to mention me and this challenge, so I figured I would leave that in the video.
From Objects and Science Woodwork, Christian area of Warren Werks.
Hey, hey!
Little note about Warren Werks, Christian Neary. He is doing a project a week.
Oh!
So definitely go check him out.
Hey!
He knocked off two. He's basically took Jimmy DiResta's suggestion of taking a deck of cards and writing a project on each card, shuffling the cards. Every week he draws a new card and does the project. Very, very cool. So follow him on his YouTube channel. He's a good guy.
So that was a cool thing to happen, and really generous of Vincent to mention me on his podcast. And once I was done with sanding everything out, I could move on to finish. For this, I just used shellac, which I really love the finish that you get with shellac. I don't use it all that often, but it makes for a beautiful finish. You can see the real nice figure in this wood, and then here it is in the actual coffee shop. And they're all loaded up with business cards, so I think this project was a success.
Alright, that is going to conclude this week's one-day build. If you are in the Connecticut area, you should totally check out the Loaded Goat Coffee Company. It's an amazing coffee shop and the owners are super nice. Let's pick next week's card. Cut the deck. And what do we have? 3 of Hearts, a bird feeder. That's kind of a boring video. Alright, well I guess we're making a bird feeder next week. We don't have a bird feeder here. Well, it's the middle of January, and oddly enough, I heard birds chirping this morning. Maybe we're in for an early spring, so next week we're going to make a bird feeder. If you did enjoy the video and want to see more, it would be wonderful if you'd like to subscribe if you think I've earned a subscription. If not, that's totally okay. And next week, I will have a new video up of making a bird feeder. Thanks for watching.